spent a week with Anton LaVey in San Francisco at the Church of Satan, performing black masses and satanic incantation ceremonies. So he invoked Lucifer and got supercharged for his killing spree with LaVey himself.
Well, obviously he was taken over by some sort of spirit of murder and mayhem and followed through. I know you mentioned that he established a satanic calling card in the way that he killed his victims. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, there's several things he did. He would draw pentagrams, as I said earlier, at satanic ceremonies. He would sometimes color or carve pentagrams in the victims, and it's also reported that he carved the eyes out of some of his victims, which is a common calling card of Satanists.
Wow. You know, I think in the way, it's really interesting, you know, you hear about the way these terrorists are hacking people's heads off and things like that in the Middle East, and I don't know, I kind of get the feeling that in the way that somebody kills another person may be the calling card of diabolical activity. I don't know if you agree with that, but...
Well, I would, sure.
Universally speaking.
When you're at the point that you're willing to murder for your religious beliefs, you've actually moved into a very bizarre realm of the mind and spirit. A lot of religious people would call this demonic possession. A lot of non-religious people might call it just psychosis.
Right.
However you want to call it, it amounts to the same thing. These people are motivated by a belief in devil worship and by a strong adherence to what they believe Lucifer wants them to do in this world.
And I think it says in the Bible the devil was a murderer from the beginning. But I know the late Dr. M. Scott Peck, M.D., author of The Road Less Traveled and People of the Lie, in his latest book, Glimpses of the Devil, and his experience with the two exorcisms that converted him to a belief in the devil, on the subject of psychosis and possession, believed that there was, you know, sort of a dovetailing and a fine line.
Well, sure, there's this bizarre nexus, and it's very odd because M. Scott Peck was a psychiatrist, and ironically enough, it's usually psychiatrists who refer people to Catholic priests or exorcists like Father Malachi Martin. Father Malachi would not talk to someone unless they had already gone through psychiatric counseling and, you know, different sorts of strategies to see if they had something organically wrong with them. But ultimately, it's psychiatrists who diagnose demonic possession in a very strange way. So they're a lot more open to it. You know, they would have different explanations for what's going on. But the psychiatric community is very open to demonic possession in certain cases.
Right. I guess they hit a wall as far as standard psychopathologies, as far as the diagnosis of standard psychopathologies rather, and are led, well, in Peck's case, I know there were preternatural phenomenon taking place that were out of the realm of the statistical diagnostic manual, whatever they used to diagnose people, and that's when I think he was really started to believe that there was something
sure. Well,
supernatural going on.
You have to remember, when a psychiatrist gets around to referring a patient to a Catholic priest for a case of demonic possession, all of his psychiatric tools have failed.
You know, exactly, and he's sort of reached that wall, and then it's become sort of a metaphysical, there's a metaphysical component. Some people actually complain of possession. And I know that in Peck's case, in his latest book, that one of the victims, so to speak, complained of an actual demonic possession. But, you know, in reading your book, and you had mentioned how he was with his cousin Mike when Mike shot his wife in the head in front of him. And Bob Larson, the Protestant exorcist, had noted how in certain traumatic events, even a car accident, for instance, can cause people to separate psychically, and in that separation or that trauma is when the demonic can attach, and that seemed like that might have, you know, the spirit may have entered him in that traumatic event, in that brutal murder right in front of his face. I mean, because he had started becoming groomed for that. He was showing him pictures of Mike was of the victims he'd killed in Vietnam and everything else. It seemed like he was starting to go into fascination with that. Then actually seeing that event, what might have been what really traumatized him. And
well, definitely so. And people who want to minimize the devil-worshipping aspects of Ramirez's career will often point to that it was that act of murder. Mm-hmm. But I would kind of concur with what you said in that in situations like that, the human will goes into a very strange mode where it reaches out either to good or to evil. When you see something like that, you either pray to God, or you tend to be numb, or you move more towards what I like to call diabolical mysticism.
Wow.
And this is a state of mind and spirit where something in your psychology likes something about the event you've seen, like a traumatic accident or a murder, and it kind of caves in and gives in to whatever the ultimate cause of this is, which I would call Lucifer. But this kind of diabolical mysticism, for lack of a better term, is another very common theme I look at in the Satanic Crime book. And Ramirez certainly got a big thrill kill, a big ego trip. He was exhilarated by murder. It gave him this super ego charge, which is part of this diabolical mysticism.
Right, like this narcissism or whatever. So I guess the demonic reached out to him in that act, in that event of seeing Mike's wife killed, and he accepted that appeal.
Okay, there's that act of free will on his part, which is true of all these people as well. They invite evil forces in.
Okay, so they caught the Night Stalker and put him on trial, and I guess there were some strange events, possibly supernatural, transpiring in court. And as you mentioned,
well, what happened was he was arrested in 1985, and for the reasons of his defense, the trial didn't get started till September of 1989. But very quickly, a bizarre series of events started happening. Number one, Ramirez never recanted his Satanism. He used to draw a pentagram on his hand with a marker pen, and he would flash it at the jury and the judge during the trial. Now, some bizarre things began to happen at the trial. First of all, different charts that the prosecutors were putting up on an easel to demonstrate different things kept flying off and falling off the easels. And every time this would happen, Ramirez would chuckle and flash his palm, which had a pentagram drawn on it. Also, a lot of the jurors and people in the court, although the court was air-conditioned, would break out in bizarre sweats.
Wow.
You know, like uncontrollable sweats.
That's unnerving.
Again, Ramirez would chuckle at this.
Wow. So that. I would be definitely unnerved at, watching things flying and starting to break into sweats.
There was an air of tension. Even reporters talked about this and how bizarre this was. Now, a skeptic would say that Ramirez was just taking advantage of some bizarre events.
Or just trying to psych people out or whatever.
Psych people out. But people who were there really, really say that there was something diabolical going on.
There's got to be a presence or a really heavy atmosphere because there's so much negative energy around this guy. You know what
definitely.
I mean?
And everyone I talked to who was in that courtroom when these things were happening are convinced that Ramirez caused them through metaphysical or spiritual means, which is very odd. Now, bizarrely, one of the jurors was murdered, a woman named Phyllis Singletary, during the trial itself, which added another dimension of tension.
Was there any connection between her murder and?
Well, they say it was an old boyfriend, and it was an apparent crime of passion.
Oh.
Okay, so that's what they say, but it's there's a lot of suspicion about that murder too. But this just added more of an evil
sinister
atmosphere, like you were talking about earlier in the trial. Now, eventually, Ramirez was